Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Roganoff, the Motor City Mad Mile. We had a great show on the Motor City Mad Mile show with Dave Bradley. My gosh, this guy was unbelievable. We talked about Manchester United. We talked about soccer, American football, and Dave was a great guest. So if you haven't had a chance to look it over, look under the Motor City Mad Mile show, and I guarantee you, you will not be disappointed. Well, let's talk about the Sports Exchange tonight. JB Ellis covered a game last night out in Chicago, and he covered the St. John's DePaul game. He'll get it as a recap in a moment. We're going to talk about some NFL, and we're going to talk about Russell Wilson, and the Florida Panthers made a big trade today. So with that said, let me welcome the crew, my longtime Sports Exchange partner, George Eichhorn.
Hey, good to be with you guys tonight. Looking forward to the show.
And Jacob Christner. I guess we're going to see you a lot the next couple of days.
You better believe you will, and I enjoyed this. And this is the first of a doubleheader of two straight. I always enjoy it.
Well, we're glad to have you. And last but not least, Mr. Ellis.
What's going on?
He got to sit in the press chair like George and I. Welcome to the real media, Mr. Ellis, when you cover a game.
What's going on? Not the first game I've covered, but
you look like you are tired. What's going on?
Oh, I'm exhausted. It's been a long day. Long day. But
wait till you get 61 in their long days, then we'll see what happens. I should point out, everybody, for those of you that are watching, that yours truly will be covering the 12 hours of Sebring next weekend over at that famous track. I'm looking forward to going to it a couple of days. I'll have a little procedure on Thursday, bouncing back Friday and Saturday, and what do you know? Who knows what's going to happen after that? So I'll be, 12 hours versus 24 is different, but anytime you get to go to Sebring, it is always a treat. So I'll have some programming next week pertaining to previewing that race. With that said, first segment belongs to JB Ellis, who covered the St. John's and DePaul game. All right, JB, why don't you give us a recap of what took place over at the Wintrust Arena, I believe it's called?
Correct, yeah, Wintrust Arena. So St. John's on the bubble have a 3-game road trip. They won all 3 games. Huge game against DePaul last night. DePaul is winless in the conference. They were, I want to say, 18 at that point. They have one more game to go. DePaul and so does St. John's. Big game coming up against Georgetown on Saturday for St. John's. That'll get them to 19 wins before the Big East tournament, which they're going to probably have to win at least one game to make the NCAA tournament. Game started out, it was tight for the first 12 minutes. St. John's was up, I think, 28-22 with 8 minutes to go in the first half. Then the wheels fell off for DePaul. You see that they were undersized, undermanned. They just they don't have the talent, unfortunately, to compete with the schools in the Big East at the moment. They have an interim coach. Obviously, the program's in a little bit of turmoil. They fought hard, but by halftime, it was a 26-point lead. The second half was more of the same. St. John's went up by 44 at one point before Rick Pitino emptied his bench. And DePaul came back a little bit to cut it down to, I believe, 27 was the final. 104 to, I believe, 77. I don't have the notes in front of me. But, it was a dominant win for St. John's. Chris Ledlam and he and Pringle had dominant games. Soriano played okay. He didn't have to do too much. He's probably their best player, and he didn't do much throughout the game, but he really didn't need to. DePaul just unfortunately not able to compete with the talent they have on that roster.
All right, as I understand, I believe DePaul is now 0-19 in the conference.
Correct.
And they've lost 31 straight in conference play. Tough way to go for them. To me, it's a school that we all know, Ray Meyer, Joey Meyer. But they're in the new arena, which I know Wintrust is obviously a lot smaller, more cozier place. But, you look at the fact that St. John's had something to play for also. They're on the bubble. You're the only reason I even bothered to watch that game, just so you know, Ellis, okay? Otherwise, I wasn't going to watch it. I had a very demanding procedure earlier that day, but because you were there, I watched it. So when you talk about you being tired, oh, my goodness. But no, all seriously kidding aside, DePaul's a proud program. Whoever gets that job will be going into the Chicago area. It's just of how they recruit the area and what philosophy that they have to try to bring it back to what it is. St. John, they're on the bubble right now. And Rick Pitino a few weeks ago called out his team in public, and now they seem to be responding to what Rick Pitino is doing. One more question that I want to ask you, Joe, about the game before we get on to the other topics. Also, Blake and Josh, we will be talking Panthers talk at the end of the show, so I hope you can stay with us there as well. Have some pretty good comments on that. Rick Pitino, to me, obviously loves the metropolitan New York area. He's there with St. John's. What was he like at his press conference? You never lack a great quote from Rick Pitino for sure. But you had an opportunity, Joe, to get a question in. And what was your question, and what was he like overall with the media?
So I asked him about the team, coming into their own and their 3-game winning streak on the road. What it was like, what was making the team click. He was really humble. He was happy with the way they were playing offensively. Defensively, he thinks they could do things better. They're not guarding the 3-point line very well at all. Before I got a chance to ask my question, he was very gracious with DePaul. He made it clear that they're going through rough times. He did not want to embarrass them. That wasn't the goal. Kind of insinuating they took their foot off the gas the last 10 minutes when they were up by 44, which I completely understand. To me, to win by 44, 27, 20, it really doesn't make much of a difference in a game like that. And if that makes the difference of making the tournament or not, it's a horrible system. It shouldn't be to punish the team that loses. A win's a win, especially when it was a dominant win, throughout the whole game.
Well, in the case of St. John's, there's no way they couldn't score 100. I was watching the game. They were too close to it anyways. They just didn't have to go any higher than they did, like you say, because they took their foot off the gas. So we all know that Rick Pitino's probably been on both sides of it anyhow. So, when you're a coach and you're a veteran coach and you've been on both ends, you can appreciate it. So, it does demonstrate a lot of class. And let's not forget the fact that Rick Pitino did win a national championship at the University of Kentucky. I don't want to get into Louisville stuff because it's irrelevant for this conversation. But, Rick Pitino's team, the fate will be decided in the Big East tournament, which, by the way, you'll be providing us coverage next week. What we're going to be doing, folks, in that scenario is we'll have our 4 people here in the studio, and Joe will go ahead and contact us remotely to give us an update, like a little segment from the Big East tournament next week, and we'll get into more details there. So good work last night, Joe. How did it feel for you finally to be able to sit in my chair, to know that, unlike what you've done in the Super Bowl, where it's a casual interview here, now you find yourself under a lot more pressure, knowing that everything is moving much quicker, a much faster pace from what you're doing compared to what you were, I feel like yesterday, you were a fish out of water yesterday for the first time, and you only get better with more games. But how did you feel?
Yeah, I was really comfortable. Just observing everything around me. It's basketball. I know enough about basketball to understand the game. I know the St. John's team pretty well. DePaul, I don't know as well as I should, but they didn't have much to talk about, unfortunately. So hopefully they can rebound well. But I think it's a great experience to be there, and obviously it'll be more and more as time goes on.
Well, we're talking not only about the teams, Joe. We're talking about journalistic experience. Okay, now you're the guy who's the eyes over at the arena, Joe. Okay, where it's up to you to make sure that you send the right message and paint the right picture. Okay, to let people know. And now you're the one doing something that you haven't done a lot, which you're going to do a lot more. I'll make darn certain of that, anyways, as we find different assignments along the way. How did it feel for you, where I'm the one who's got to make the decisions about what I'm putting on, and I'll have a lot of time to do it? Let me tell you, Joe, here's what's going to happen. When the time comes that you cover a spring training game, I'll tell you what, okay, you'll be the most humbled individual on the planet, because when plan A and B don't work out, then you're going to be scrambling for C, D, and E. But let's keep the focus on what you had done yesterday, knowing that now you are the point man, okay? about what you had to do at a much quicker pace.
You know, I mean, it's natural. I'm used to adversity and thinking on my feet. It's, you know, just the new challenge of a new day.
Okay, fair enough. Let's go to the chat room. Panthers are wild here in this chat room, and we'll start with Blake. Okay, let's go Panthers. Blake, stick around, and Josh, stick around. We'll be talking about Tarasenko, the last topic of the night. And yes, Tarasenko is the name of the game. And hello, guys. Hello, Ralph Williams. Good stuff. All right, we'll go on to a couple of NFL topics. Custom survey from Nielsen, and the NFL reveals the Super Bowl 58 reached an estimated 210 million viewers. They had that story in the 224 version of the Tribune. All right, we'll start where we left off, and that's Joe Ellis. What are your thoughts about those numbers?
Listen, you know, the numbers are crazy. It's just one of those things where they just keep going up, and, you know, it's wild to think.
Okay, George?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, this is America's pastime. Let's face it. This is one of the best days of the year for a sports fan, especially those that are football fans. And it's not surprising to me because you had a great storyline going there with San Francisco and Kansas City, and both the teams that a lot of the experts picked would be in the championship game turned out that way. Obviously, the Lions lost out, and you know, other good teams weren't there, Baltimore included. They had good seasons, but no, it doesn't surprise me in the least because the Super Bowl is such a ratings hog, and the sky's the limit. I think that things will just continue to grow. I mean, the league is very popular all over, and you had two good teams playing. Scott,
Jacob?
Oh yeah, one of the things I always looked at something like this was you're gonna have those kind of games. Some of them are really bad. I still remember the Rams and the Patriots, which I thought would be an absolute zoom, was 13-3. So you just get those boring games, then you get these ones, which was good from the shot. It was great for the 2 weeks, and you just had a really nice game. And I'll tell you, both guys played well. You had Brock Purdy absolutely sticking with the greatest quarterback in the league. Stay with him for a young guy like that. That's wonderful. It wasn't a bad game. Nothing really happened, and everybody had to enjoy it. It was like, and it went all the way to the end. And that's the most you can think of it, you know?
The only thing I'll add to this whole thing is, number one, you had 210 million viewers, but you also had a lot of people watching those expensive ads. And you know who got fat with those ads? You got 210 million people watching. And I'm not getting into what the ads cost are, but I would say the advertisers definitely got their money's worth with that number. Let me go over some company stuff while I may. Just so everybody know, the Sports Exchange being broadcast around the world. The audio version of the Sports Exchange can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts. So there you have it. Also, please hit the red subscribe button on YouTube, South Florida Tribune. We're striving for more subscribers. Please also comment, like, share the broadcast. Great activity in the chat room tonight. I love it. We had some good activity when Dave Bradley was on as well. Want to be a guest? Chat room is one way to do it, or send your topic ideas, southfloridatribune@gmail.com. Also, if you want to advertise cost efficiently, give me a call, 954-304-4941. Yes, we do broadcast live on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. I'll go over more information afterwards, more NFL conversation. The NFL announces the 2024 salary cap at $255.4 million per club. All right. You know what, George? Does it matter how much money that the clubs are going to get?
Yeah, it does matter. I mean, you got capologists on every team, multiple guys and ladies that know the salary cap and how to maneuver it, and dead money versus real money, and all that fun stuff that goes with it. So I'll tell you what, you know, I think that was met with really good enthusiasm when the cap was expanded. I think that they realized that costs are going up all around, and players are demanding more, agents are demanding more money, but it takes a lot of money to run a franchise. I think the league is realizing that, you know, that cap had to be higher. Now, that being said, you don't just throw money away. The good general managers, the good front offices, those are the ones that can manipulate and use those guidelines to the best of their ability. I mean, you know, it's a typical situation where you just can't go out and pay your quarterback this and expect to still have enough money left. I mean, but every position on the team is important, but the skill positions like quarterback, and I know Mel talks about it a lot, running back, some people don't believe in that, but wide receivers, and of course on the D line. But all that being said, yeah, I wasn't surprised that they raised it, Scott. I really wasn't, and I think it'll be good for football for the teams that are trying to mount these challenges to win a title.
All right, let me add something before I turn over to Joe. Number one, everything that I talk about promo-wise can be seen at the bottom of our ticker as well. So you'll find out that a lot of things we have, because, we have a strong television, YouTube audience as well. And it also talks about Sideline Sports' website as well. So if you want to see it visually, we run it concurrently throughout the entire broadcast. And I try to get to at least once or twice an hour for the most part. So you'll see it, you'll hear it, but I want to make sure everybody knows how to find us in the different ways. Pointing that out early. Joe Ellis, okay, does the salary cap mean anything?
So the NFL is obviously a business in decline with an $8.16 billion league-wide 32-team salary cap. Obviously, this is a business that's hurting, that they can spend $8.16 billion on players alone. Forget about the rest of the staff. I would hate to own an NFL franchise because, we're spending $8 billion just on players. How much must they make? And we had 210 million watch the Super Bowl. There's $8 billion on player salary. Yeah, I think it's just a bad business model. Let's tear down the whole league. But okay, I did hear from the Giants general manager at the combine. He actually was surprised that it went up as much as it did. He, in his estimation, had I think a 235, and it went to 255. So they were very happy with that because it'll be more money to spend.
I'm trying to determine right now, Joe, if you're giving me the straightforward poker face about being sarcastic at 255.4, because I've only gotten to know you pretty well. Listen, indeed, okay. I think I'm just kidding with you. I like the voice. Okay, so I'm trying to make that. No, it's all fun in the family, man. We family members can afford to satirize each other because we've all been a part of these brunt jokes. But yeah. All right. Well, with that said, Jacob, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, like we said, 255 million. You want to know what these are for, don't you? They're aiming to try to save the really stupid teams, like say Denver. Who basically right now has to pay 85 million in dead cap, which all 32 teams, other than the team. Okay, I'll just say this: other than the teams that already have their quarterbacks, there's some of these teams right now that need. I can name one right now that need to jump in. We're 1 million. So but I'm just saying. But the main thing about it is they're trying to save. I believe they're trying to save some of these teams. New Orleans is another team that has some dead cap problems. There's some other teams that have dead cap problems. I think they're there to save them more than anything else. And then plus the fact, a lot of these stars won't just go to LA or New York. A lot of them will go to any part of the country, just depending on which.
Yeah, that's a good point, too, because the one thing about the National Football League compared to a lot of other sports is you'll find a lot of your marquee players like to go to the Chicagos and New Yorks and the LAs because they think they're going to get bigger market deals. Where even in the NBA, a guy like Giannis Antetokounmpo, for example, can stay in Milwaukee and make big bucks there. Yes, is there a pun intended with the Bucks? Yeah, probably Bucks, whatever. But the whole point is you keep the stars in the smaller markets, so to speak, and they don't have to go to the obvious markets. With that said, who did I leave off with here? Who's last on this one?
You got us.
Huh?
You got us on
you
this
got
one.
us all.
Oh, I did. Good stuff. All right.
Yeah.
Well, who's last is me. And then how much money you spend, it's how well you spend it wisely. Okay.
Yeah.
Remember, we learned anything from Major League Baseball? It's not the big spenders that go out there and win the world championships. Okay. It's how well you spend it wisely. Yep. 255 is a nice number, but the reality is you got to make sure that number covers additional players beyond what you have. If you're going to have injuries and whatnot later on. And of course, you also have to factor in your rookie wage scale as well. So, with that said, we're going to be announcing a new segment in a little while, actually right now. Our final topics of the night, since we are a South Florida-based production company, there will be a South Florida topic from one of the 4 major sports every single week beginning tonight. What does that mean for the Panther fans sitting in the chat room? There's only 2 more topics before we talk about the Florida Panthers, so stay with us. All right, but with that said, where will Russell Wilson land? Denver, like Jacob alluded to, there's an $85 million dead cap hit. All right, Jacob, you practically let the cat out of the bag, so where do you think Wilson's going to land?
It's just being realistic. Let's just probably say if there's no Kirk Cousins, probably in Minnesota or the Raiders or something. I just want him in Chicago. $1 million. Hello, people. $1 million. Plus, you draft you draft quarterback, which is less guaranteed money, so you can go get some real weapons. But the realistic part, since the Bears aren't smart, we'd say the Raiders or the Vikings.
All right, I want to bring up Troy Gary's comments here. It's like we're going to have another, not only are we going to have another writer, but you know what, Troy, just with that responsibility of writing, we might end up bringing you on the air sometime. Would you be interested coming on, Troy, to talk about the men's basketball tournament? You have an open invitation. All you got to do is reach out to me, and we'll schedule you. So you're covering the Big Ten Conference Women's Men's Basketball Tournament. I'll write a few articles for the South Florida Tribune. Not only will you do that, you'll be writing it for the Sideline Sports as well, since the 2 of us work well together. So, Troy, looking forward to having you on. I've seen a lot of great things about you. We'll be glad to get you more active with the program. So, all right. So, with that said, Joe, where do you think Russell's going to land?
You know, it's just sad what Denver did. And, you know, Russ is going to get paid no matter where he goes. He's going to take the league minimum to play, and he's still going to get paid from Denver. You know, the Giants really don't have a quarterback. So, you know, that's where I would love to see him go. In Chicago, they could have Justin Fields, so they don't need him, and they have the number 1 pick, so they don't need him. The Giants,
Yes,
we have a guy by the name of Daniel Jones, the guy who's, you know, trips over his own feet.
Right.
Can't throw the ball to the correct color jersey. You know, he's not very talented. We spent a lot of money on him. He got Russell Wilson for almost nothing, and we can see what a good quarterback can do. And not that he's a great quarterback, because he's really not at this point of his career, but compared to Daniel Jones, he's a Hall of Famer. You know, but then again, you know, most people are Hall of Famers compared to Daniel Jones. Mark Sanchez can be a Hall of Famer compared to Daniel Jones. But now that I lobbied for the Giants to go out and make this move, I don't think he ends up there, because the Giants don't do things in a way where they think outside the box. Everything is very plain. We're going to stay with Daniel Jones till he can't play anymore, and then we're going to get somebody else who's not very good too. But I could see him, you know, Chicago, I think, would probably not do it as well. Minnesota, I think, would be a great fit if Cousins walks, but I don't see him walking there. Maybe the Raiders or New Orleans would be my two choices.
All right, George, what about you?
Well, I think the Raiders, obviously, and the Vikings you guys have talked about. Pittsburgh's in a situation now with Kenny Pickett. I mean, he's still young and developing, but there are a lot of critics out there, on his back in Pittsburgh. New England, don't forget New England. Of course, they've had a tough time since Brady left. And who's the other one I was thinking about? The Atlanta Falcons, too, is another one that might be interested. Although I think they would probably more so target, somebody like Kirk Cousins if indeed Minnesota tries to move him. And then we don't know about Justin Fields as he might come into the marketplace too if Chicago decides to trade him. So there's that. Those would be my top teams, Scott. The Raiders, and of course the Vikings, and then Atlanta, Pittsburgh, sort of on the outside.
Let's go back to the chat room, Candy. We'll start off with Ralph Williams. Okay, Denver gets egg on their face. Yeah, they probably do, but Sean Payton and Russell Wilson won't be exchanging Christmas cards anytime soon. Troy Gary, Raiders are my prediction for Russ. Interesting. I could see that one. The Giants should not be given that big contract by Ralph Williams. And finally, Mr. Pittsburgh himself, Ralph Williams, Pittsburgh not interested in Wilson. I'll tell you what, I'm going to throw in at you guys that you probably don't think about it. If the Tampa Bay Buccaneers do not re-sign Baker Mayfield, you got a minimum contract walking in there. Don't be surprised if Russell Wilson, okay, could end up in Tampa. That's my wild card. Think about it. Baker Mayfield will not give them a hometown discount. Why not? What's a million? They don't have any comfortable in Kyle Trask, right? A guy that they thought would be the heir apparent. So I think Russell Wilson could be a Tampa Bay Buck. Some of the other picks that you guys have made make a lot of sense, but I'm trying to be different. All right, Jacob, obviously you'll certainly know how to, sign language. So now I'll let you go ahead and transfer that sign language to your mouth.
JB, I will give you Justin Fields if you like him so darn much, because I don't want Caleb Williams. I sure as hell don't want him. So it's like, you can have Justin. His time is hit in Chicago. That's like, I want the $1 million. I want the less guaranteed money on the draft, and I want the weapons. So it's like, I'll give you Justin Fields for the Giants, please.
Yeah, but they could have Russ, and then they could give Barkley the money, and then go sign whoever else they need to get. But that's why they don't figure that out.
Right.
But it is what it is. That's why I'm not a GM. $8.16 billion in wasted money. That's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
But good for the NFL players. I give them a lot of credit. They take a physical beating. I know they work hard. Most of them, I would say 99% of them are hard workers that deserve every penny they get. They have a limited career compared to other sports, so good for them. Get every penny they can get, because I'm sure if they're getting 8.16 billion, imagine what the owners are getting.
Well, the only thing I'll say about Justin Fields is I think the logical place to put him would be in Atlanta. I think that's where he should go. I really do. Cousins, I think George is right, could conceivably stay in Minnesota, although unless Cousins is using Atlanta to try to get Minnesota to increase the ante a little bit.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I like Russell Wilson in Tampa, and I could see Justin Fields definitely being down in Atlanta. I mean, either place you go, again, it depends on where the bargains are. I mean, Baker Mayfield earned the right to get a raise, is what he did. He took a prove-it deal a year ago following Tom Brady and got him in the playoffs. Now, again, by the same token, that could backfire because the Buccaneers believed in him, and you don't know whether he's going to fall into another situation where the system isn't as good. They want you in Tampa. Baker, you may want to stay there. It's about getting the money right as well. So, so Ralph Williams says Raheem Morris needs a QB. Desmond Ridder not again. Yeah, well, that's what I've alluded to, Ralph. Okay, they know they need a quarterback there. If they had a quarterback, Raheem Morris would not be the head coach there. Okay, Ralph, so there you go. All right, well, our final topic of the night for you Panther fans that have been patiently waiting, now we will talk about it. Does the Florida Panthers acquisition of Vladimir Tarasenko from the Ottawa Senators for 2 draft picks make them favorites to win the Stanley Cup? Bear in mind, the Vegas Golden Knights are starting to make some moves. They're the defending champion as well. But the Panthers entered Wednesday's play with the league's best record at 43-16-4. I'll say this from past experience, and I'll turn it over to the crew. Teams that generally lose in the Stanley Cup Finals that first time and are good enough to get back could conceivably win. I remember years ago when the Detroit Pistons, this time I'll make the reference, okay, George, different sport, lost to the Lakers in the NBA Finals in 7. They came back and won the following year because they're hungrier. They are hungrier, and I think that the Florida Panthers have the eye of the tiger. This is a move that's impactful. I believe that they can win it all. So with that said, I'll turn over to JB Ellis. What do you think?
Listen, when you're in first place and you're, cruising throughout the season, but you want to win, you do exactly what you do at the trade deadline. You get a better player. You give up some future capital because you want to win now. I mean, do they have a chance? They're hungry. But the NHL playoffs is one of the greatest playoffs because it comes down to hot goaltending. Whatever goaltender gets hot for that month and a half, 2-month stretch, that's the team that's going to end up winning. But the Panthers have just as good a shot as anybody else. This was a great move. I give them a lot of credit for trying to do something to make this team even better. when they didn't have to. The team's good enough already, but they said, you know what, let's make it even better. So, I applaud them for that.
I've never met Bill Zito. I've only heard a lot of things from my colleagues there. One of the most savvy general managers out there. I do believe with Joshua Bernstein that another move is likely on the way. But the one thing that can't be lost sight about with the Panthers is now they put together 5 good years in a row, and they haven't had that type of sustained success throughout their history. So, you finally have a general manager in place. I think they would have done well with Joel Quenneville had there have not been that controversy there. They picked it up with Andrew Brunette, and then they made the decision to go to Paul Maurice. And I realized that they made it in by the skin of their teeth last year on the final game of the year, and they took it all the way to the final. So another move could be, let's face it, you have Friday's trade deadline looming, and the Panthers made one big splash. But again, you still have to keep up with the Edmonton Oilers and the Vegas Golden Knights because they believe they can win it as well. And don't count out the Vancouver Canucks who've been playing exceptionally well all year, or the New York Rangers as well. But I like where the Panthers are headed. And you know what? You've got to, if you really feel you can go for it, you do. Sergei Bobrovsky obviously has done a marvelous job as well. But that said, George Eichhorn, what do you think? Do you think the Panthers have done enough to go all the way with the Tarasenko move?
Yeah, they got him from the Senator, Scott, and all they had to give up was a conditional 2024 4th-round pick. But if they get to the championship and sip from the cup, it'll be a 3rd-round pick if the Panthers win it all. I like the move. It makes a lot of sense. He's a legitimate top 6 winger. He's got tons of playoff experience. Let me throw these numbers out at you guys. So this year, he's got 17 goals and 41 points so far. But listen to the playoff experience this man has. 44 goals and 64 points in 97 postseason games. And, of course, he helped the Blues win the Stanley Cup back in 2019. So, yeah, I like the move. He's a pending unrestricted free agent. But these kind of moves are made. And obviously, I've seen them over the years. My hometown Red Wings have made these kind of moves. But I agree with you, Scott. That is a lot to be said for that fact that you mentioned about how close they got last year and how they sensed it. They tasted it. They watched that other team on the ice hoist that trophy and the Stanley Cup, Las Vegas. And now, yes, they're a hungry team. I agree. The Florida Panthers are serious as well as they should be.
And before I turn over to Jacob, at one point that came into my mind, do you think the Toronto Raptors are upset that they traded for Kawhi Leonard for 1 year and all they did was win an NBA championship? The answer is no. They got an NBA championship. It worked out. Kawhi went to the Clippers, and the Raptors have a championship banner in Toronto. All right, with that said, back to the chat room. Joshua Bernstein, okay, you got a couple points, much stronger team than this year than last. Of course, all you had to do is look at the regular season record. They are by that. And then the other one that Joshua talked about, I thought the Panthers would be out of Florida before we talk about them contending for a cup. Well, Josh, as I mentioned in the first show, there's perception, there's reality, and they're very much alive. And another thing that Panthers fans should realize is they have a new practice facility over at the War Memorial Auditorium site, an upgrade for where they're at. Although when I was around the team more often, the ice den in Coral Springs was a lot easier for me to get to, but they wanted to make sure that their fans in Central Fort Lauderdale had more access to what they were doing. All right, with that said, Jacob Christer has been patiently waiting for a crack at the Cats. What do you got?
You're talking to the ultimate Blues fan. So Tarasenko, very much, and finally the cup when we finally got it, taking out Boston in 7. Let me say this. I know what Tarasenko was like in the playoffs. This was an amazing move. An amazing move for Florida to do this because you had a ring. You had the cup. You had some experience there, especially all those points, all those games. You're adding something like that. If there's rookies on that team, they can talk. There's the thing, and it's the best team in the league. And even crazier, what makes them dangerous, like I say, like for instance, Boston's second around that division with the points wise, and they've got 20 overtime losses, 15 overtime losses, some ridiculous number. And Florida's got 4. They finish their games up. They're dangerous. They're everything like that. And here's the deal with Tarasenko: if you can't clinch him after the season is over, Detroit, go get him. because Detroit's getting better. Iceman's got that. Tarasenko would be amazing to make them in the number one.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know what the Red Wings are going to do at the trade deadline. I know Steve Yzerman has been tight-fisted, only talks to the media when he sees fit. I believe they play at Colorado tonight, and then they play in Vegas on this trip, right, George? And then
they got a tough trip right now, right, Scott? They've got quite a few games ahead of them. He's been very tight-lipped. You bring up a good point, but don't forget that them contending this year, I don't think was fully expected. But the fact of the matter is, now that you are there and you're in one of the wild card spots, it'll be interesting to stay both Detroit and Tampa Bay and see what kind of last minute deals they might make to strengthen them.
Well, the Red Wings schedule this week, as I understand it, you've got Colorado, Arizona, Vegas, and then you fly over to Buffalo before you return there. Yeah. I don't mind the first three ends, but boy, you talk about the west coast of Buffalo. Oh, well, I don't know. Do they have their own team playing? Because if they do, then it cushions the blow a little bit, but we won't even get into a whole lot of details there. If the Red Wings get into the wild card spot, at least they can end the playoff drought, then you can proceed from there. The one thing I'll say about the Wings that doesn't get, I know Dylan Larkin's out for about 2 weeks with a lower body injury, but the play of Alex Lyons, the former Panthers goaltender, has really kept the Wings in this thing. Because you talk about Billy Husso and James Reimer, and Alex Lyons to me is a silent MVP, and he played with the Panthers and he played an important role of what they had done a year ago. All right, with that said, this concludes this edition of the Sports Exchange. We're not going to do a whole lot of parting shots unless somebody here wants to get something off their chest. I know we want to make sure that we can start planning some shows ahead of time. Joe, any final thoughts about what's occurred with you over the league? One thing that Joe Ellis will be doing is if he's not on our show on a given night, he will be doing some remote broadcasts and checking in from time to time. I think it's a good experience for Joe to be able to talk at the arenas when he gets there. But, Joe, what have you seen? Any final thoughts before we wrap it up tonight?
No, I'm looking forward to the Big East tournament next week. I think that should be a great experience. And we'll see what happens from there. Try and get Jacob in the field a little bit as well.
Okay. Well, we'll look forward to your updates next week. And by the way, I believe we're going to have Travis Holmes take your place. Travis Holmes is one of my versatile guys that will be taking place when Joe's not in the studio, but he's a very valuable piece of our operation. George, some final thoughts here really quickly.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're able to go, Joe. It's a sad situation with DePaul, and that really is a very sad situation. And we've got it here locally too with one of our college teams who had a disastrous year, the U of D Titans. So I'm glad you had a chance and that you did a great job, Joe. And looking forward to more of your reports here on our programs.
All right, Jacob, what about you?
Oh, thing about DePaul is I remember when it was Joey Meyer, and they had some good year. They had some good years with that. I remember those years. It's been miserable since he's been gone. That's been 20 years. So, I mean, it's just one of those things. And now they're really it's like personally to me, I've always talked about wanting to coach one day. I would always talk about the worst of the worst. That'd be the type I'd want, just to be able to build something back. But the biggest thing about DePaul by themselves is we're gonna have a topic tomorrow night. We're gonna be seeing this about Dartmouth. Yeah, I'm gonna send the topics. Right. We're gonna have it about Dartmouth and their unionized and everything. We're gonna start seeing little things like this. I'm gonna say something with DePaul tomorrow night.
Yeah, that'll be a good. I like that, and we're gonna have a lot. And just while I have a moment to talk about it, there will be some new wrinkles to Pundit where we're going to try to bring on a guest a month here to talk about other topics. We have a lot of great things here in the pipeline as well. I am looking forward to returning to Sebring, the 12-hour race. I really had a great time with the Rolex 24. And anytime, the one thing people don't really understand is endurance racing isn't about just the drivers in it, but the manufacturers as well. And, that's the one thing that I really amazes me. I talk about being around the four major sports and all that, but motorsports has always been a passion, and there's so many different wrinkles. And I'm looking forward to all the different storylines that I'll be coming up with over the next 7 days as I lead into Sebring. There might be some changes in programming, guests that appear on our shows. and that every one of you guys are going to have access to, depending on the time situation. So with that said, Joe Ellis, why don't you let everybody know how they can get a hold of you?
JB_ the program on X, Sideline Sports, every Tuesday night, 8:30, all over Facebook, Twitter, or X, YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to Sideline Sports. Go to sidelinesportsnet.com. It's been rolling across the screen throughout the whole show. Go to the website, see some great writing. I know George, Scott, Jacob, and myself all write on there. Troy will hopefully have some Big Ten content on there soon. We got Jeff Croyle from Minnesota putting some stuff up there, and there'll be more stuff throughout the weeks and months in the future coming on there. So you want to go there for all your sports news.
And also, let's not forget who the mastermind behind that website, Joe. I'll give you a clue. It's not you and I. It's Candy Ebling, right?
Without a doubt. That's the business.
And also, let me point out. All right, go ahead. We'll turn over to Jacob, and I'll wrap it up with our closing thoughts. Go ahead, Jacob.
Well, this is where we're going. One of the things I'm going to be advertising right now is I'm bringing back Pundit Views. First show on the Pundit Views. It'll probably going to be the next week. I'll let everybody know. The first one is going to be Dave DeRochers. That's from Sideline Sports. And we're also going to have a young man named Ashton Call. He's kind of like my little mentee. You know what I'm saying? It's like I love helping him out, and he's going to help with the interview also. So we're going to have a good time with this.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to Pundits, so I'm glad we're going to work that in the schedule. So, all right, George Eichhorn, you have a book to promote as well. And Jacob, one other thing I should say, thank you and Joe for doing a very nice job promoting our stuff on Twitter and sharing all the content, because that's an important part of what we do to make sure that we drive as much traffic to the website so people can see our story as well as our shows. All right, George, go ahead.
All right. Like Scott mentioned, I got a book called Detroit Sports Broadcasters on the Air. I write for the Motor City Tribune, which is part of the South Florida Tribune, and you can find my columns there. And at the end of my column, there's a nice link that Candy has to look at the book, obtain it if you want. You can reach me. Best way is Yahoo, gicorn@yahoo.com, or on Twitter on SandGSports99. Follow me on LinkedIn and Facebook as well. And look forward to many programs here. 108 Stitches, Pundit, and the Sports Exchange, and Fire Up. Great programs. And Sideline Sports and South Florida Tribune bring you everything you need in sports. Great job, guys.
Joe Ellis and I can both say that we do our best to make it a great 1-2 punch, and we're far from done. Right, Joe?
Oh, plenty of stuff coming up.
All right, so I should also point out our website, speaking of, is www.southfloridatribune.com, Twitter/X @Tribune South. I didn't have this much energy yesterday. All I was busted up because of medicine, but I'm all right tonight. I got what I needed. Candy Ebling is behind the scenes producing. She's a jack of all trades. My book out there, Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders, puts it right up there so everybody can see it. Of course, Ray Charles Camp would love you anyways, Ray, but at least you can think about it. But anyways, Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders, old school media versus new school media, available on Kindle and Amazon. Everybody can benefit from this book, whether it's a book where you want to learn about the media or be able to create your own media platform or sustain what you already have. It doesn't matter. It's a read that everybody can benefit by. So if you don't understand us, with the amount of time and work I get into, you'll have a much better standing of us so you understand what goes behind the scenes. One of my favorite things I mentioned in there, and there are a lot of things, is Frank Reynolds. Okay. Frank Reynolds, to me, is the one guy who, during the Reagan assassination attempt, blew a gasket with his crew, said, it's not a matter of getting it first, it's about getting it right. So whether you've met these people in person or you haven't, I try to bring you closer to those individuals so you feel like they're your friends. And I know that the industry's changed. I stay in it because I really believe in it. I'm passionate about it. I wouldn't be doing several broadcasts a week, as well as being able to go out there and run a website. And I also want to point out that Candy Ebling is involved in other shows as well. She's developed with the Fire Up shows, and she does Chicks and Salsa and 3 Chicks in a Pod. And thanks to Joe Ellis for making that connection, Candy's able to develop as a broadcaster as well as some of the other things she was able to do. So we want to make this platform, a people's platform is what we want to do. So for all of you individuals that are participating in the chat room, all you got to let me know is if you want to come on as a guest, and we'll make it work. If those of you that are more comfortable participating in the chat, we'll do what we've got to do. But I'll tell you one thing, sleep is something I don't get a lot of, and I will tell you right now, I will be the gunslinger. Well, I already am the gunslinger of this business, that I will try everything in my power to make every broadcast different so that we can make them better. I'm a perfectionist, and I'm guilty as charged, and I believe that the only way that an organization can be successful is you have to have great people around you. And I feel very blessed across all of our shows here on the network that I have the best out there. And Sideline Sports has been an ideal partner. And there will be other partners that are announced as time progresses. So we have a lot of projects to look forward to, and stay with us. So we want to thank everybody once again on behalf of George, Jacob, Joe, myself. I want to thank everybody for joining us on this edition of the Sports Exchange. And like I say, once again, for the final time, our broadcast can be seen on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube, as well as the rest of the other outlets as well. So you can find us a lot of different places all over the world. So good night, everybody. We will see you next Wednesday night. And Joe Ellis will be reporting live from the Big East tournament. Good job last night, Joe, but we got a lot more work ahead of you. All right, good night, everybody. See you next Wednesday, Sports Exchange. Pundit tomorrow night with Jacob and I, George and Denzel Snipes. Good night, everybody.